So I have been going down a rabbit hole of Oscar-winning movies. So like the larger categories, Best Actress, Best Picture, things like that. And the first movie that I've watched was Sophie's Choice. So this movie was made, I believe, in the 80s and it stars Meryl Streep, but she won Best Actress for this movie. So I'm gonna do a recap of it and I'll talk about what I got from this movie, and I don't know if it was the intention of what I was supposed to get from it, but I'll talk about what I actually got from this movie. So Sophie's Choice starts with a character named Stingo. He's from the South and he moves to Brooklyn to write a book. He saved up money to write a book and he rents a room in this boarding house. He goes to his room, like it looks like it's the first night, and his neighbors upstairs, Sophie and Nathan, write him a letter for him to come up to have dinner. Later that night, he hears a commotion and it's Sophie and Nathan fighting, but it's really Nathan being verbally abusive, accusatory. They're on the steps and the dynamics of their relationship are shown pretty early on, to where, Nathan seems like he's this overbearing person and Sophie kind of is the shrinking flower and is trying to convince Nathan that she hasn't done anything wrong. So Stingo watches, or he witnesses this, and Nathan sees him and he comes and he's in his face and he's mocking him. He puts on this southern accent and basically says some like racial slurs, but is mostly commenting on the South and how racist the South is for the most part in their history. So it's really interesting because the story, it takes place about 2 or 3 years after World War II. And of course, what took place during that time is the Holocaust and the persecution of Jews. So it's interesting. I don't know if he's being racist or is kind of like showing us like, you have your history too, you know what I mean? So it's like, oh, you're from the South, you have your history of persecuting people as well. But later he does meet Sophie and she kind of apologizes for what happens, and they kind of end up being these friends. So he goes up later, I think the next day, and has tea with them, and they're like this whimsical-ish couple. So it kind of gives this idea that they're just this erratic couple. Like they fight, Nathan's verbally abusive, accusatory, but then they make up and then they are dressed in these whimsical outfits and just kind of feel a little, not really eccentric, but erratic to me. So they all become friends. Stingo's hanging out with them. They have a lot of scenes with them hanging out and being friends. And they also talk about how Sophie and Nathan meet. And Nathan, because Sophie, she was in a concentration camp. So this is what happened to her during World War II. She was in a concentration camp. And when she left, she came to America. They have a scene where she passes out and he finds her and helps her. He takes her home, kind of nurses her back to health. And then it looks like this is how she kind of clings to him, or how this all starts with them being together, because he basically saved her life in a sense. And then there is a scene where we kind of find out where Stingo's head is. So he is trying to basically get laid, find a woman to sleep with. So Nathan does find him a girl that apparently seems like she's promiscuous on the surface. So he's kind of excited about it. He's excited to get her alone. But when it comes down to it, she's all talk and he gets nothing. So when he leaves his date with her, he comes back and he's talking to Sophie. He goes up to Sophie's room. Sophie is worried about Nathan because he hasn't come home yet. So he does tell her about the book that he's writing, and it's basically about a 12-year-old boy who lost his mother. And this is basically Stingo's story. So he's the 12-year-old boy who lost his mother. So Sophie basically tells him her story of when she basically, was in the concentration camp, and she was at Auschwitz, and she basically outlived her mom, father, and her husband. So she tells him that she used to be married, and she talks about how she left the church where she was, and she actually saw and went to the university that her father and her husband worked at, and saw them being taken away by the Nazis. And then she also mentions that she lost her mother from tuberculosis, and she ended up in the concentration camp because she went to go buy her mom a ham, which was illegal at the time, and she was trying to hide it and pretend like she was pregnant. So that's how she ended up getting found out by a soldier and then taken to a concentration camp. And she does mention that her father, I don't remember what part it was, but she does mention that her father was a big advocate for the Jewish people. Like, he was really trying to stand up for the Jewish people. She is not Jewish, obviously. So yeah, she said that's why he was taken away, because he was a big advocate for the Jewish people. In this part where she's talking about being in the concentration camp and how she wanted to end her life, the Stingo guy is being like weirdly and creepily touchy-feely. He's like touching her face and it's being super weird. It really rubbed me the wrong way, and I don't know if they were trying to get him to be empathetic, but it just came across very creepy and like just not the right move. So Nathan does come back and is super suspicious of Sophie and Stingo. And Stingo does try to calm him down and lets him know that he was there for moral support. So now they're friends again, and Nathan apparently has this breakthrough at work. He buys both Stingo and Sophie nice outfits for the night. Of course, he comes back home sweating and paranoid again. And this time he's really accusatory about Sophie getting a ride home from work, I believe, from a guy. And then he's all sweating and he's paranoid. So at this point, I'm thinking he's on drugs, or that's basically what's wrong with him to me, is that he's on drugs. So he does accuse her of sleeping around, but then he kind of switches gears and asks her how she is one of the few people to survive the concentration camp. So he's coming across suspicious of this as well. So I don't know if he's always been suspicious or if it's just that moment. How did you survive the concentration camps when so many other people didn't survive? So they do have this big blow up. And then the next day, Stingo does find that Sophie and Nathan are gone. And this is where things really start to unravel. So Stingo calls a Dr. Blackstone to see if he's heard from Sophie. The doctor does tell him that Sophie had a friend who worked for a professor at Brooklyn College and may know where Sophie is. So Stingo does go out to the college and speaks to the professor. So the professor states that the friend isn't there anymore. She went out of the country, or back home out of the country. And Stingo asks him if he ever met Sophie. So he does say that he recognized her. He knows who she is, and he knows who her father is because he saw him give a lecture at the university. And the lecture was basically about his hatred for Jewish people. So he was not an advocate, like Sophie said. He had a hatred for Jewish people and he supported the Nazis. Funny enough though, even though he was a Nazi fanatic and supported them, he was still taken away by the Nazis because they didn't care. They just wanted to take away all the educators and the people at the university. So Sophie does come back that night and Stingo confronts her about the lie. She says she lied because she was afraid to be alone. She then tells him the true story about her father. She would type out his speeches that he dictated and discover the cruelty he wanted the Jews to endure. She made a mistake on one of his speeches, which made him belittle her in public. So it sounds like she still loved him, but he just wasn't a good man at all. Then her husband as well. Her father was his mentor, so he of course supported what the father was saying and was also a Nazi advocate. So she also had a lover named Joseph who wanted her to help with the resistance against the Nazis. So she declined because she didn't want to put her children in danger. So this is where we find out that she also had kids with her husband. So Yosef was caught and then his life was ended. Sophie was then arrested and her children were transported with her to the concentration camp. So again, she told another lie that she didn't get sent to the concentration camp because of the ham. It was because she was in a relationship with someone who was in the resistance against the Nazis. She wasn't. She didn't do anything. She didn't try to help them. They did want her to do something to help. I believe it was to translate some documents from the Nazis. They wanted her to translate for them, but she refused because she didn't want her children to be in danger. But at the end of the day, they still were in danger because of her association with someone from the resistance. So she does mention that her son was sent to a children's camp and then her daughter was sent to the crematorium. So she does tell him that. So she did start working for the commander while in Auschwitz. Someone from the resistance wanted her to steal a radio out of his daughter's room and suggested seducing him to get the radio. So she did do this, but mostly to try to get her son out. The commander agreed, and then she did try and fail to get the radio. But the commander did promise her that he was going to help get her son out. And he did not keep his promise. So that's why she tried to end her life after she left the concentration camp. After telling him this story, after telling Stingo this story, she says that she lives for Nathan. And Stingo, being a freaking weirdo, tells her to live for him when she shouldn't be living for anyone but herself. She needs to find purpose in life, which is ridiculously, it will be hard when you lose your entire family and you're the only one left. So what she needs to do is heal from her trauma and then try to find a purpose in life to live for herself. And you know what I mean? She shouldn't be living for any man. So for him to say that, he just sounds like a weirdo and he just wants to use her. So Nathan does come back and all is well for a while, but then Nathan's brother reaches out to Stingo. Nathan's brother is a doctor, and Nathan, he did tell them what he did for work is that he's a research biologist, I believe, and he works for Pfizer. So his brother does tell him that he does work for Pfizer, but it's nothing like that. Like they just gave him some odd job because he's a paranoid schizophrenic, and Sophie doesn't know. So that's why he's so all over the place. And he is on some drugs as well, so I was right about that. But yeah, he's a paranoid schizophrenic. So the reason why he called Stingo is because he wants Stingo to keep an eye on him for him. Later, Nathan has another one of his episodes where he's accusing Sophie of stepping out on him, and he has a firearm. So Sophie comes back, tells Stingo, and they talk to Nathan, and he's just sounding just all over the place. So they're afraid that he's going to come back and harm them. So Stingo takes Sophie to a hotel. So when they get away from the hotel, and then they're in the hotel room, Stingo tells Sophie that he's going to take her to Virginia, where he has a small farm. They're going to get married and have kids. I don't even know where he's getting this idea from. Like, it's so weird to me. Like, what would make you say this? What would make you think that she wants to marry you or do anything or have anything with you when she is literally so wrapped up in Nathan? Like, he's been friend zoned, but he's really trying to climb his way out of there. It's like, she doesn't want you. Like, it's crazy. Like, accept your freaking role as a third wheel and move on. Like, stop being so weird. Like, he's so weird. And he does express to her that he loves her. And it's just, she has expressed no interest in this man. Zero. None. It's crazy. So at this point, Sophie does tell him that she would be a terrible mother. And then she finally tells him what happened with her kids. So when they got to the concentration camp, everybody's lined up. She tells one of the officers that, you know, she shouldn't be there. It was a mistake. So he told her, well, instead of me taking both of your kids to the crematorium, I need you to choose between which one you want to keep. So she is like beside herself, freaking distraught. And he's kind of like, come on, pick one. Okay, send both of them. So at the last minute, he tells her to take his daughter. So she chooses her daughter to go to the crematorium, and it is heart-wrenching. Like the little girl is just screaming her head off the entire time, and Sophie is just distraught. Yeah, and this is probably the most powerful scene of the movie. That was her choice. That was the reason why it's called Sophie's Choice. And at that point, a little while later, I think some time passes and they ended up sleeping together. When they wake up, or when Stingo wakes up, it shows that Sophie's gone. She leaves him a letter and basically said that she needs to be with Nathan. So he goes back to the boarding house and find that they both took cyanide and they're together in the bed. So she really was living for Nathan, because it doesn't really too much say why she ended up taking the cyanide with him. But come on, she lost her entire family. I mean, the only thing she's living for is Nathan. So if he is wanting to end his life, he wants them to maybe end their life together, be together in the afterlife. She's probably like, hey, I get to see my kids and my family again, you know? So that's how the movie ends. And I'll say, I think that she definitely deserved the award for best actress for this movie. Meryl Streep is literally that girl. Like, she can really disappear into a character where you forget you're watching Meryl Streep. And then her accent that she had, because in the movie she moved from, gosh, I can't remember, was it Poland? I think it was from Poland to America, and she had to come to America and learn English. She didn't know any English, so her accent was really good in this movie. So she is phenomenal in this movie. I loved her character. She is just very layered and well developed, and I really like that about Sophie. I found, now I don't know if they were doing this on purpose or this was something I was supposed to get from the movie, but I found Stingo to be so jarring. Like, he was so creepy, so opportunistic. Like, he waited until she was just so distraught to like try to sleep with her and try to move her to his farm and marry her, and she showed no interest in him. It was super weird and creepy. They do say that he is 22, so I guess the age, maybe he needs to mature some, but he does not look a day over 40, whoever the actor is. So I'm not buying it. You can, I don't know, with 22, him being that weird, I feel like he should know better than to act like that. Like, she's so traumatized and you're trying to take advantage of her. So I'm not really giving him too much leeway for his age, to be perfectly honest. The one thing that I would say about the movie that I wish they would have did, I wish they would have showed her with her kids the day they got taken to the concentration camp at least, because the only thing they really show is them on the train and she's kind of holding them. So I felt like the scene where the daughter got taken away would have been more impactful if they would have showed her being a mother to them, at least on that actual day. And then taking out maybe some of the scenes where they're being all friendly with each other and they're like a threesome together, being friends. Maybe take out some of those scenes, because I did kind of skip ahead a couple of those scenes. But yeah, I do think it would have been a lot more impactful if they would have showed her interacting with her kids on a regular day. But at the end of the day, it really was impactful, mostly because of Meryl Streep. She's an amazing actress, and then the daughter, who was like literally screaming her head off like when she got taken away. So it still had impact, but I do feel like it would have had more if they would have showed her with the kids. But yeah, let me know, have you seen this movie? And if you did see this movie, did you clock Stingo and his weirdness, like him being friend zoned and really trying to be a creep in the friend zone, and he found her at her most vulnerable moment and took advantage of that? Or am I reaching? I think he took advantage of her and he was waiting. He couldn't wait. So that's all I have for today. Bye.